right. Natalie, we are rolling. Great to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Me too. Me too. And also, too, for everyone else, welcome back to the Low Carb Consultant Podcast. So, today I'm really excited to bring on a guest who's not only a seasoned bikini competitor, but also a powerhouse advocate for the ketogenic lifestyle. She's built an incredible coaching business, helping others transform their bodies and their health, all while staying true to a natural, sustainable approach. So again, welcome, Natalie. It's great to have you.
Awesome. Let's get into
Yeah,
it.
let's get into it. And I want to actually jump right on into it and maybe to kind of kick things off here. So we were chatting about this before we started recording. You're a keto athlete, you're a bikini competitor, you're also a coach. Like, what lit the fire for you to start this journey in the first place?
Oh man, taking me back. It's been a hot minute. So 2025. I started my journey back in 2011-ish. And it was heartbreak. It was a relationship gone bad and heartbroken and kind of looking to find myself again. Especially when you're young. I mean, I was in my 20s and uh, you don't really know who you are. You kind of blend your life with this other person. You become this relationship. And coming out of it, and it became really toxic, cheating, all this mess, and I just stayed way too long. And it's funny, Bronson and I know you had Bronson on recently. We always talk about how everything is everything, and everything is a parallel to your fitness and your health journey. And relationships are a really good example, a really good analogy of that, where it's like when you're living this unhealthy lifestyle and you're kind of addicted to it and it's your familiar normal, you stay in it longer than you need to, even though you see that you need to make a change. And that's the way it was at the end of that relationship. It was like, oh, okay, let's give it more time. Let's give it more time. And then eventually I had to get out of it. And when I get out of it, it was like this whole, who am I again? What do I want in life? What are my hopes and dreams? And I was living a totally sedentary lifestyle at that point in time. You know, when you fall in love and you gain 30 pounds and you're eating and you're going out and you get comfortable. We were living together. We were doing like the pizza nights and just all that, right? And,
Mhm.
we'd done these kind of futile attempts to get healthy together, did P90X and all the kind of fat.
P90X.
That,
Wow, bringing me back. I was a P90X guy too before CrossFit. That's really funny that you mentioned that.
oh yeah, and it was like we thought we were eating healthy, but we really didn't know what healthy really was, right? So a part of my personal growth journey was health and fitness. I was a dancer. I went to school for dance. I was a dance major in college, and I had gotten out of dancing and I'd gotten out of any kind of fitness. And it was, just sedentary. I was working in arts administration and I was working behind a desk and I was working a ton of hours. And, then when I had a mortgage to pay by myself, now it was all about paying the bills and doing what you need to do there. So health and fitness was just not a part of my life, although it had been when I was a dancer. So I got back in the dance studio as I was rediscovering what I love to do. And so that was my first kind of foray back into moving my body again, getting back in the dance studio and then caring. And I had a resurgence of my faith as well. I grew up Catholic, but I was not really, and I always had a relationship with God, my personal relationship with God, but I never really like dove into my faith. And so all of this, it was like all these pieces of me that started coming back. And so I dove into my faith. And as I dove into my faith, it was this idea of my body being a vessel of the Holy Spirit. And so for me, it was, I need to treat my body better and I need to not treat it like a trash can and just put anything I want in it because it tastes good. And I always had a big, huge sweet tooth. So I could sit down with chocolate covered pomegranates or chocolate covered blueberries, like the little things that are like a million pieces you can just like popcorn, watching a movie or watching TV and just
Sure.
kill a whole bag of whatever candy. And so it was like, I need to not do that if I care about my body. And so it was really kind of a spiritual and like a healing my heart, healing my inner world journey that brought me into caring about food and nutrition and fitness. Um, so first it was getting back in the dance studio. Then I got introduced to aerial arts, so pole fitness, pole dance fitness, and
Cool.
um, silks and lyra, and that was a whole different level because now you have to have this upper body strength, this core strength. As a dancer, it's a lot of leg strength, right? It's not, you're not doing a whole lot with your upper body. But boy, did I feel out of shape when I got into aerial arts. Like, oh, I can't lift my body weight.
Sure.
And I was, and at that point, I had actually already lost about 30 pounds. I'm a small individual. I'm barely pushing 5 feet tall. So I'm a very small individual. So for me, I was not like this massive weight loss, but it was a third of my body weight. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I ended up under 100 pounds. I went from, and if you see my pictures, like my transformation pictures, I looked like I was a lot heavier than that in my old photos, but it was all body composition because I went from just having a lot of excess body fat to losing the body fat, but not having muscle mass, not having, I had a base of muscle from being a dancer, but it was nothing like it is now. And so I was under 100 pounds. I was tiny. And then I discovered it was like this rabbit hole of nutrition, which I think a lot of us that come to keto and carnivore, it started somewhere else. And so it started for me with just clean eating, whatever you want to call that, right? Stepping
Yeah.
into, I know what I'm eating that's not healthy. I know I'm eating junk food. I know I'm eating fast food. Those are the things I knew I needed to get rid of.
Almost like starting, almost like going paleo. I feel like a lot of people start with paleo, you
It
know?
was paleo. Honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but I was just starting, and my journey actually started with Lent. The year that I went back to my faith and left this relationship, I gave up dairy for Lent because for me, dairy was always a problem. I knew that I had reactions to dairy, but I loved it. I'm Greek and Italian.
Ah, yeah.
We live on dairy. I'll never forget when I first gave up dairy and my mother said, "Well, what are you going to eat?" I'm like, well, there's other things in the diet besides dairy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like everything had dairy in it.
Sure.
And my favorite sweets were like the creamier it is and the, you know, more decadent that it is, it has more and more dairy. So when I gave it up for Lent, the first time it was like the typical things. I know milk and cheese and ice cream are dairy, right? But the following year, 2012, I started reading labels. I was like, I'm going to
Mm,
now take it to the next level and I'm going to give up anything that's made with dairy. And for me, it opened my eyes to what's in food that I never noticed was in food before. I learned that all baked goods have dairy in them. But oh my gosh, look at this laundry list of other things that all these foods have in them. What are these things? There were things I couldn't pronounce. I'm like, what am I putting in my body? And that's what really started the nutrition side of things for me. It was like, oh my gosh, I started caring about what's in the food, right? Which
yeah.
these things are not real food.
Yeah.
It's just things I thought were healthy were junk, were
Sure.
man-made, were did not include, had maybe one or two ingredients that were actual food and everything else was just junk. And so I go out to eat one time to a Japanese steakhouse, where they do the, what do you,
Hibachi grill.
hibachi, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That's
said,
great, by the
you know
way.
what, I'm hungry. Can I just have the meat and the vegetables? And one of my friends at the table said, "Oh, are you paleo?" And I had never heard of it before. This was like 2013. I'm like, what is paleo? And so I started researching it.
Sure.
And that lent, because for me at that time, I couldn't stick to a diet to save my life if all it was just for vanity. If I just wanted to lose weight or look better, that wasn't enough of a purpose for me to go on a diet. So it was always Lent. It was like, I'm going to give something up that is a sacrifice spiritually. And so I said, okay, now that I've learned about this paleo diet, it was kind of the next level of kind of elimination diets.
Mm.
And then I did that in 2013. So it was like 2011, 2012, 2013. But it was only ever for Lent. And then I would start adding things back in. And I started to notice the difference of how I felt when I added these things back in, the inflammation, the brain fog, my skin. It was all these things that had nothing to do with weight loss. Weight loss for me back then was a side effect. I called it a happy side effect. It was like, oh, I lost some weight, but it wasn't what I was trying to do with changing my diet. But oh my gosh, all these other benefits and my mood. People noticed that my mood improved significantly. My mood, skin, inflammation was the big one. And for me, my face showed it all. When I was eating the things I was eating before the inflammatory things, my face was rounder. It was just
Yeah.
inflamed and like swollen. It's fascinating to me. So over those first 3 years, it was like this trial and error and just discovering how much better I felt. And I'll tell you, when I first went paleo, that was like it unlocked a whole new world. I couldn't believe how good I felt after meals. And that was when I really noticed that my gut was screwed up
Hmm.
from all the things I was putting in my body before, and how now after a meal, I felt like I could run a marathon. It wasn't, I no longer felt like I needed to take a nap. I wanted to curl up in the fetal position. I was, uncomfortable. And the biggest thing was I couldn't be present with the people that I was with. A thing that I work with clients on now, a huge thing is the social piece. They feel weird or strange or different, or everybody's going to judge me, or what are they going to think? And, I'm so used to just going with my friends and eating whatever they're eating.
Yeah. Like
But
the social aspect, like going out to dinners and stuff, right? Or
yes,
like maybe
yes,
family dinners and those types of things.
exactly. Not wanting to be the weird person, right?
Mm.
But I I used to go to these things and eat whatever I wanted, and then I would be in this fog. There would be like a veil over my face, and I couldn't be physically present and mentally present with them because I felt so uncomfortable physically in my body from what I was eating and mentally just not there. And so it's, what are you bringing to these social events with your friends? Are you present with them, or you're doing what they're doing and now you can't be fully present? You can't be fully engaged, and it actually negatively impacts your experience with your friends because of these substances you're putting in your body. Alcohol is another one.
Sure. And I want to actually go back to what you were just saying, and then maybe we can even touch on alcohol because that's obviously kind of a big social thing that people have trouble eliminating or avoiding, whatever the case is. But what, going back to, when a client, for instance, is mentioning to you like, oh, I've got this family dinner and I know they're going to have XYZ there and everyone's going to start asking me questions about like, why am I not eating, mom's this or that type of thing, or I'm going to be going out with friends, we're going to eat this and I'm kind of stressed out because I, don't want to be the person that's not eating whatever. Like, what is some advice that you give to some of your clients that are going into some of those situations? I was just curious.
Yeah, so what's interesting is my clients run a gamut from brand new to this lifestyle to pros, right? And by pros I mean they've gone carnivore, right?
Mhm.
They're now ready to reintroduce, and we go through a reintroduction process. And my ultimate goal for all of my clients is to be able to live without tracking every morsel, without obsessing over everything. And so depending on where they are, we have different I would give them different advice, right? Some people are in a position where you can have a little bit, especially when it's a special occasion that is rare and unique. So maybe it's that Christmas where you only see this family member every 3 years. You don't even know if you're going to see them every year for this event. Maybe you see them once a year, and they make this special thing, and it is the thing that you love more than anything. That is different than
Yeah.
eating a donut at the donut shop because you go to coffee with a friend once a week and you keep getting that donut or you keep getting that pastry. Right?
Agreed.
It's a different situation. So we definitely work on the situational things, because I'm a big believer in what is restrictive is a mental decision. Right. A lot of the time I work with clients who get into this, I feel so restricted on this diet. I could have two clients, one who is eating 80 grams of carbs a day, another one that's eating 10 grams of carbs a day. And the one that's eating 80 grams of carbs a day could feel restricted, and the one that's eating 10 could not. And it's entirely dependent on the mindset, of what you feel is restrictive. So a lot of it is a mental internal battle that we're struggling. So specifically about the pressure from family and friends. So the biggest advice I give to anyone, no matter where they are in their journey, is it truly pressure that is coming from externally, coming from them? Or are you assuming
Mm,
they're thinking and what they're feeling and what they want you to do? So let's first get that straight.
sure.
90% of the time, it's perceived pressure. It's they're going to think this, they're going to think that. I'm going to hurt her feelings if I don't eat this. Are you sure? First of all, where is it coming from? Because a lot of it is,
Yeah.
favorite topic to talk about is the limbic brain, this emotional survival brain that is based on these patterns that we've created over time. And many of them are biological patterns that have existed from the beginning of time. And it's risk, doing something different equals risk and fear to the limbic brain, because it's this survival mechanism. Whatever we do on a regular basis is what we do and is what's safe because it's familiar.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's best for us. If we've been doing this thing over and over again, like every single time I go see the family, I cheat on my new diet, but that's because it's what I've taught myself that I do. Until we do something different consistently enough, we're going to keep going back to that old pattern. It's just a habit loop, right?
Mm,
So, a couple of things here. One, let's identify where this is coming from. Is it truly pressure? If it is, because look, I said I'm Italian and Greek. I did get real pressure
yeah.
what
Sure.
at some point in time, and my dad still will poke fun at what I'm doing. But now I no longer take it personally. So the biggest piece of advice is this. Number one, identify if it's coming from them or coming from you. If it's coming from you, we've got some inner work to do around why do I feel that I need to be doing this to appease somebody else when it's not even real? And if it is real, why do I feel I need to be doing something to appease someone else when I'm doing something for my health and my well-being? Secondly, this was the advice I give to my best friend back in the day. She came from a very conservative Catholic household, and she started doing BJJ and started doing sparring. It all started before that with Spartan races. And this is such a great analogy because we can take our diet so personally. But a lot of people hearing this will hear, well, that's a weird thing for her family to give her pressure about. But to her mom, who saw her as this quieter girl, to be doing obstacle course races
Yeah.
and then sparring in a boxing ring and a BJJ floor was opposite of who she was supposed to be as this Catholic girl.
Mm,
And so she got so much pressure not to do it, and what are you doing, and this is not who you are.
mm,
And the advice I gave her at the time was, show them how important it is to you by your consistency, because they've seen you start and stop things before, and they think this is a passing flirtation, a fad, something that's not going to last.
Uh,
In our diets, that happens more than anything, especially with the ones that are closest to us. They love us and they want what's good for us. And so what they're seeing is this diet makes you miserable because you don't get to eat all these things that you love. And the reason why your grandma and your mom and your great aunt are pushing these things on you is because they have seen you get joy from them in the past. Now, the longer you're on this journey, you discover that's not real joy. That's pleasure in the
mhm.
moment. But they see it as bringing you happiness and joy. And then they see this diet as this restrictive thing that's taking away everything enjoyable in life. And a lot of the time that is coming from you. You are perpetuating that by showing them how miserable you are on your diet. Oh, you're going into this family event going, I can't have that. I can't have that. I'm on this diet. I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. I absolutely hate those words. We need to
Yeah.
remove, you are not, you are choosing. You have chosen to eat this way. You have chosen to eat these things and to not eat those things for a reason. And when you can show your family that you love what you're doing because it's doing something good for you and that it makes you a better person, meaning you're happier, you're more joyful, you're more present with them, you're kinder to them. What you're not doing is saying, I can't, woe is me, it's not fair, I don't get to eat that, I hate this, I'm only doing this to lose 20 pounds. And you're snapping at them when they say something about your diet and you're defensive and you're angry and you're bitter. They're seeing it as suffering.
Yeah.
So, my friend, I told her, just keep doing what you're doing, invite them to your races, let them see what you're doing, show them that you're not giving up on this and that it matters to you and it means something to you and that it makes you better, not worse. And it's improving your relationship with them and not making things worse. A lot of the time, people are very fearful of how it's going to impact your relationship with them.
100% agree. And I was going to touch on that because going back to like that family dynamic piece, when you've got like the moms and the aunts and the uncles, and they have probably over the course of their life maybe put on a little bit of weight and they're eating what they eat, but they see an individual in the family that's trying to change, or trying to change what they eat. And I think a lot of the times too, like a family member can like project their vulnerabilities or insecurities of past failures with getting in shape or whatever on that individual, saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? But it kind of creates like a, not like a toxic dynamic, but like for the person that's actually trying to make the change, it makes it more difficult being in a dynamic like that, for sure.
Yes. And that goes back to the consistency as well, because, you know, the other thing with you're putting it in their face,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes they've never cared about losing weight or getting in shape or getting healthy. And now there's this for a lot of my clients who are especially new to this lifestyle, their entire families are overweight,
Hmm.
out of shape, never cared about fitness, never cared about nutrition. And now there is this entity in their life that's actually showing them that somebody else does something different.
I feel like it scares them.
Cute.
It scares them almost. Like it scares
Yeah,
the family members.
yeah.
Like, why is this person trying to change?
Yes, yes, they're threatened and they don't even
Yeah,
know that they're threatened. But what will happen is the longer you're consistent and you show them, for one thing, you're going to start changing for the better and they're going to see your changes, the physical and the mental and all of the other benefits, especially the closer they are to you and the more they know about your day-to-day life and all of the ailments that you're healing and all of that. They're going to see that and it's going to speak volumes. You're not going to have to defend the diet when you're getting results.
that
Number
makes no, that makes a ton of sense. Like you're right. You will not have to defend anything that you're doing once. A, you're happier, B, you're glowing, and C, you are getting the results. People are going to ask, like, okay, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
No, they ask the same question, but they ask it differently, right? They
Yeah.
went from, what are you doing? To,
Yeah.
okay, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Now I want to know about it. Now they're getting curious. And I went through that phase of like shoving it in people's faces when I was like really passionate about it to shutting the F up. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything with words unless they ask me about it. I'm just going to do what I do quietly.
Let the results
They
speak.
start asking, then you share from a different place, and then they're receptive to it. So part of it too, you always have to say, okay, well, what am I doing that's making them react this way? Right? Maybe I'm grumbling about my diet and they're taking that on and they're reflecting that back to me. Or maybe I'm militant and I'm like, everybody needs to be doing this. And maybe I'm being a little judgmental about what they're not doing and they're receiving that and reflecting that back to me.
Sure.
People are our mirrors, right? But when
Hmm.
we're happy and we're getting results and we're consistent, I started having people go out to dinner with me and go, okay, I'm not ordering until I know what Natalie's ordering. What are you ordering?
Yeah.
What are you, tell me what you're looking at on the menu and I'm going to order what you're ordering.
Well, and I kind of wanted to go there next. Speaking of, your diet now and how you found keto. So at what point did you come across the ketogenic diet? Because obviously moving from paleo, which what we were talking about earlier, into like even keto or carnivore, that's a big move. I was curious to see what created that transition for you.
So for me, it was bodybuilding.
Mm,
So like I said, I was like 100, under 100 pounds. I was skinny. I went from fat to skinny, basically. Um, and you could see my muscles only because I was so skinny. So it probably looked like I had muscle then, but it was nothing like it is now. And first, it started with learning what macros were. I had a friend who was cutting for her wedding, and she was a CrossFitter, and she was paleo as well. And I was bringing salads to work that had no meat in them. It was just lettuce and nuts and avocado. It was very, very keto, high fat, actually low to no protein. And she's like, where's your protein? And I was like, what are you talking about?
the
So,
most important part.
and that's why I was so small because I really wasn't eating enough protein.
Sure.
So that kind of started me on the next phase of my journey, which was okay, buying protein, eating protein, for breakfast, eating eggs, meat. Um, Budget was a big thing too back then because I was paying my mortgage myself and meat was expensive. So I was living on all this like cheap stuff. So that kind of started me learning about macros and learning about protein. And then I got into, what was it? Oh, I got into, so there was a group called Keto Gains.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I got into that group.
Luis Villasenor, right?
Yeah, Luis and Tyler and the crew. And it was the Facebook group. Somehow, I don't know how I found them, but I started learning, and I'm so grateful that I got engaged with them first because it's so funny. When I met Bronson, he was like, "Oh, do you know these people? And do you know these people?" And we knew a lot of the same people, but there were the whole keto world of keto influencers. I knew nothing about any of them because I came in from Keto Gains, which was more, it was combining bodybuilding with keto. So it was a high protein approach, it was real food, it was clean eating, it was not keto products and
Yeah. Yeah.
ketosis and checking your ketones and jacking your fats up and barely eating any protein. Yeah, I never really got into that world of people. So I learned things the right way, essentially. And at that point, I was already a primal health coach. So I'd gone through Mark Sisson's primal blueprint and primal health coaching, which is very, at the time, they didn't have their keto reset yet, and they hadn't put out um, keto programs and products yet. So at the time, it was very much aligned with paleo, but it was they taught us about the carb curve and like this level of carbs versus this level of carbs versus a ketogenic level of carbs. So I was kind of like coming in through real food, paleo, primal, and keto gains. I went to Paleo FX. I used to go to the old Paleo FX conferences back in the day, and I went and I met Menno Henselmans, who's big time bodybuilder, statistician, and he now for years has been running his own personal training certification, which is incredibly extensive. But I'd gotten the bug in my ear about competing in bikini from my pole and aerial fitness days. I'd gotten my first six pack. I was like, I had all this, I was starting to build muscle by putting the protein in. And, a couple of people had asked me if I compete. And so once again, the seed was planted. I started Googling and learning about bodybuilding and bikini. And so when I met Menno, I cornered him at this conference and I was like, hey, I was working with my first coach at that point in time for bodybuilding. And we were doing the more traditional approach, which was high protein, high carb, low fat.
Uh,
And I was only a few weeks in with this new coach. And I was like eating a ton of sweet potatoes because on paleo, it's like, what else are you eating for carbs? Right.
yeah.
And so now I'm like kind of second guessing some of the things that I had learned about grains and my own response to grains, which was not good. My gut did not handle them well. But I was like, well, maybe I need to start eating rice. And I'm kind of like backtracking on things.
Yeah.
I cornered Menno and I was like, hey, I really believe in the power of higher fat diets, especially for females, for hormones, for gut health, for all these things. But now I'm working with this coach. I'm doing this like 40-40-20, where 20% of my diet is fats. And I don't really believe in this. I don't think this is the best way to do it. I want to be healthy when I do this prep as much as I can, right? It was my first ever bikini prep. And he's the one that said, well, if then I really think you should look at keto. Um, and I wonder if maybe he was the one that introduced me to keto gains. He might have told me about them. And so then dove into keto gains, learned what they had to teach. Um, and I stopped working with that coach, started working with some other um, personal trainers, but only for training. And I was taking nutrition into my own hands. So I did that prep myself with a friend of mine who was a personal trainer, kind of helping me out on the training side. And I did all my nutrition myself. Um, and I did it keto. And that was my first entree into keto. And so I felt amazing. It was, I hate to say effortless because it was my first prep. I'm sure it wasn't effortless. I can look back and say that now.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of personal growth that happened in that first prep because it is an extreme sport. As
Yeah.
healthy as you try to do it, you are essentially overtraining and under eating. That's what you're doing to get to stage.
Sure.
But the way I felt on keto, I think made it, I mean, just the first few weeks that I did the higher carb approach and the lower fat approach with her, and a ton of cardio. I was having to do she had me on 45 or 50 minutes of hit cardio daily,
Dang.
fasted um, intervals on the treadmill, sprint intervals from day one on a 16-week prep with this low fat, high carb. And I got so sick. I don't know if it was the flu, whatever it was, but it took me out for weeks after.
Well, I was gonna ask you about this because I had a question about this just in terms of prepping for these shows, and like you said, basically, it's slightly to an extreme. You're trying to put the best package you possibly can on stage. It's like overtraining, under eating. But I would assume, especially, and I could be completely wrong here, and this is going to show how much I know about like women's bikini competitions, but it's like I would assume from a hormonal standpoint that if you're a female doing this type of prep, cutting, you're overtraining anyways, you're under consuming calories, being on a ketogenic diet would probably, because of the high fat, would probably be a little bit more of a better route to go than the traditional like 6 meals a day, low fat, carbs like rice and chicken breast. Like to me, like is there any of that that when you're like talking with clients or coaching or even looking back at like some of your own, like literally what you were just laying out, some of the own pitfalls, do you feel like, yeah, it's because I was so high on the carbs and so low on the fat that my hormones were taking and I was feeling like crap. But if I'm going to keep the calories low and the fat's high enough and it's ketogenic, that's what's going to help me feel the best during this type of cutting phase. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. I wrote a blog post back in the day. I had this blog and I kept this one blog post all this time. And it's funny. I still get discovery calls just off of this original blog post I wrote about the difference between a traditional prep and a ketogenic prep.
Uh,
And some of the big differences that you mentioned, I didn't have to eat 7 times a day because
yeah,
the reason you're doing that on those preps is to manage your blood sugar, right? If you're eating high carb, low fat, you have to eat every 2 to 3 hours, like clockwork. It's exhausting and it makes it so much more difficult in your day to day life, right?
makes sense.
Working, traveling, the things that you're doing where I have to stop and eat a meal. This is why traditional bodybuilders travel with these massive bags of meals pre-prepped because they have to be ready to eat every couple of hours. It's
Yep.
exhausting and unnecessary on keto. You can do 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day. I don't recommend for most women OMAD. I think men can do it and thrive on it. OMAD for women is a disaster. So I generally would recommend either a 2 or 3 meals a day. But oh my gosh, now you have so much more freedom in your day to where you don't have to be a slave to your meals. Secondly, if you do end up with a longer time span where you can't eat, those ketones you're producing, they sustain you. You're not getting hangry, you're not getting exhausted and tired. It's a longer burning energy, so you have energy for a lot longer. If you're on the run, you can just decide to fast and say, you know what, I'm gonna have that next meal whatever time I get home. No biggie. You're not moody and tired
Yeah.
and angry and exhausted. So the blood sugar stabilization that you're getting on a ketogenic way of eating, it keeps you balanced for much longer. Um, you don't have to do all this cardio. That was one of the main reasons I loved it was because I'm not a cardio fan. I'm not going to opt for cardio unless I absolutely have to. And now the way that I do my preps, and I've always, ever since then, I've always done my preps with keto. My last 2 preps I did with carnivore, and I will tell you, easiest prep ever. If you want to have the best prep of your life, carnivore is the way to go. But because it simplifies things even more than keto. With
Yeah.
carnivore, you're not having to prep batches of vegetables for the week. It's the simplest and easiest way to live. But but yeah, so it's simplicity and meal prep and meal planning and eating throughout the day, your energy levels, your mood, all those things are supported. Uh, the the lack of cardio, not having to do so much because when you think about it, cardio, you have to burn through those carbs. On
Yeah.
high carb, I never really understood this either. I'm like, they're pushing these high carbs, but at the same time, now you're also having to push high cardio, where you could just cut both out and now you're simplifying everything and you're making it so much easier for yourself. Strength train and keto takes you most of the way there. And then my first couple of preps and all the preps that I've done with my coaches, we've been able to slowly implement small amounts of cardio. And even at the very end, I'm only doing a fraction of what my counterparts are doing.
That's interesting. And so I had a question here in regards to utilizing a ketogenic diet. So I'm assuming here, maybe you can correct me. So let's say there's like an off season from Bikini, right? You're not cutting. Are you typically going through maybe like a mini type of a, maybe not a bulk, but like, I'm sure like the female Olympias are going through like a bulk. In Bikini, I don't know if there's a bulk since you want to keep a certain type of package that's maybe leaner or more trim, whatever, I don't know. But do you typically go through like a muscle building phase with keto? Can you walk through what the macros might look like for that? And then can you walk through as you transition to like a prep and competition mode, how might those macros change a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, this is awesome. One of my favorite topics right now. I'm talking a lot about this because what I see women in women is chronic dieting their entire
Mm.
life and chronic yo-yo dieting. And it's interesting because you could compare cutting and bulking to yo-yo dieting, but it is two completely different things when you're doing it right. I've done it wrong, and I had an eating disorder early in life that reared its ugly head after I became a pro. Um, so I've been through, and for me, it was bulimia. So boy, oh boy, have I done it wrong, especially in those early years. When I was new to competing, it would just like be, oh, the floodgates would open after a show because you're so, regardless of how you did it, keto or otherwise, at the end of it, you've been on very, very low intakes,
Yeah.
energy, calories, um, at the end for a while, and you are depleted. You're very low body fat to where you actually do have to put on body fat after a show, because getting as lean as you are for a competition is not natural. And for women in particular, it's very important to put body fat back on pretty quickly to get just back to a baseline level of health, because women are not intended to be that low for very long. So stage lean is not sustainable. It's not something you're going to do even weeks after a show. We want to get back up. But I don't like to use the term bulk
Mm.
because it's highly unnecessary to bulk to the level that we're seeing a lot of competitors do. And a lot of competitors are, in my opinion, they're not bulking, they're yo-yo dieting. They
Mm.
are using bulking as an excuse to eat like an asshole in the off season and put on way more body fat than is necessary. Most in the fitness space are going to say you have to choose either fat loss or muscle building. You can't do both at the same time. You cannot recomp. Another thing I loved about keto was that it actually made recomp pretty easy, especially when you have a lot of body fat to lose. So where I was starting from and where a lot of people start from on keto, if you start strength training and you're eating enough protein, which is a huge thing that a lot of people do wrong on the ketogenic diet because they're so afraid of protein. Oh my God, it's going to kick me out of ketosis. It's going to gluconeogenesis, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're eating enough protein to build muscle, and you're eating sufficiently, or you have enough body fat on you that you have enough energy to push hard in the gym and to recover well, you can build muscle either in a deficit, at maintenance, or in a slight surplus. You do not need to be in a massive surplus.
Mm.
You don't need to be doing these huge bulks. And that's something I've learned along the way. But more of it for me was the justification. A lot of people go through this justification because, oh, I'm in a building phase. That means I can eat and eat and eat because we just want to eat and eat and eat, right? But what I have learned, and this past prep was the most successful I've ever been. My last two preps have been the most successful reverse diets. So coming out of a show, what I call metabolic restoration, you have this period of time where you have to bring your intake up to find your maintenance again. Because if you say, okay, I started my prep, and we'll talk about macros. If I start my prep at 2,500 calories and I end my prep at 1,200 calories or 1,000 calories, if I say, oh, my maintenance was 2,500. So the day after the show, let's just go back up to 2,500. You're going to gain fat and you're going to gain it quickly.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, my old maintenance was 2,500 calories. Now I'm at 1,000. Let me add 100. And then let me add another 100 and another 100.
Is that a day, a week, per week?
So the way I do it is, if you're gaining, and depending on the person, right? So
Sure.
if it's a client who had a lot of body fat to lose and we've been on a cut for a while and they've lost a lot of body fat, but they still have a lot of body fat to go. Women, we're talking, you're still over 30% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
You probably don't need to gain any body fat in a restoration phase. So with them, I am going to not increase unless we are maintaining. We're going to be looking and making sure you're not gaining. If you're gaining at 30%, now you're going up to 32 and 33 and 35, There's no reason. You still have plenty of body fat on your body. And you
Hmm.
should be able to, when we're doing a restoration phase properly, the fascination with all my ladies is, how in the world am I eating more and I'm not gaining? Because you were deep in a deficit and we didn't need to be there any longer. When you're training well and you're recovering well and you're eating the right things, you're putting nourishment into your body, especially keto and even more so carnivore, because your body's using everything that you're giving it, the nutrients in the food and the macronutrients and the micros. You're not going to see weight gain when you start increasing, unless you're going crazy and you're doubling what you're eating,
Yeah.
right? So, but if you're stage lean, myself, for example, this past restoration phase, um, well, this past one's not a great example because I was able to go right back up to my old maintenance. Um, and what I will say is, the longer you've been consistent with strength training, so say you're an athlete, myself included, this is my 10-year lift anniversary. I've been doing this for 10 years now. Cutting and bulking the wrong way and
Yeah.
then doing it the right way, right? Being consistent with my training, with my nutrition, you will eventually get to a point where you can jump right back to your maintenance and you're not going to see quick fat gain.
Hmm.
Gained about a pound a month. And when we're talking about muscle building, this is the thing I like to point out. Fat loss, I like to see about 1% of your body weight per week when we are in an aggressive fat loss phase.
Hmm.
That is healthy. Anything above that is too much. And my ladies always get this wrong. They think they need to be losing 3 to 5 pounds a week or else, oh, it's too slow. No, 1% of your body weight per week. So if you're a 200-pound person, we're talking 2 pounds a week. If you're a
Hmm.
150-pound person, we're talking a pound and a half. That's aggressive. And for a lot of women, most of my clients are 40s and up, 40s, 50s, 60s. It's going to be slower than that.
Yeah.
You're doing it right sustainably. So for myself, small individual, I'm sitting at 100 and I just hit about 119 in my off season. So I've been in a off season since my show was last November. It's been almost 6 months now. And I
Okay.
have about another 6 months before I get on stage again.
Okay.
So I'm right in the middle of my off season. So I've just now gotten to about 119. When I go into a cut, I am not going to expect more than a pound a week,
Got it.
because the leaner you are, the slower the rate of loss in a fat loss phase. Muscle building is about a quarter of that rate. So what we're talking about, if you want to see a pound a week of loss in a fat loss phase, we're talking you'll be lucky to see a pound of gain in a month
Yeah.
if of muscle. So when people are talking about bulking and gaining a pound a week of weight on the scale, they're gaining body fat.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I gained 10 pounds of muscle in my off season. No, you didn't.
Yeah, the muscle building piece definitely takes a lot more time. It's slower. You need more patience with
And the
that.
longer you've been lifting, it's going to be even slower than that. For me, I'm lucky to gain 1 or 2 pounds of muscle in a year. I'm a
Yeah.
42-year-old female who's been lifting for 10 years, and I'm not on PEDs. I'm natural. So
Hmm.
to gain 1 or 2 pounds, so between my last two shows, I gained 2 pounds. That's incredible. If I gain 1 pound before this of muscle before this next show and I maintain that through my cut, that's incredible. So this idea that we should be putting on 15 to 20 pounds in the off season as a female in a bikini division, and I'm in the wellness division now, so it's bigger, it's more mass, especially in the lower body. Um, I don't need to be putting on that much. So my last stage weight was 111. Um, I want to come in and I need to come in more conditioned for my next show. So uh, it was exactly 2 pounds higher than I was in my previous show. So my stage weight before was 109. This time it was 111 with more muscle, but now I need to get more conditioned, meaning I need less body fat, for my next show to come in more leaner. So now I need to aim for under 110 for my next show. I'm sitting at 119 now, which is about only 7, 8 pounds up from what I was last show and 10 pounds from where I was the show before that.
Got it.
I'm going to aim for an even lower stage weight this time to come in leaner. So if, let's say, I aim for 106, then we're talking 13 pounds tops. I'm about at the high end right now. And I have a guardrail. And I like to tell my ladies to have a guardrail when you go into your restoration, your building phase. We're going to have a guardrail of when I hit this number, I need to chill out. I don't need to keep on pushing it to get higher and higher intake. I'm sitting around about 2,100 calories in my maintenance right now. I'm calling this my main gains because this year I'm more committed than ever to not put on more than 15 pounds in my off season, so that my cut is easier. We don't want to have these 6 month preps. They're exhausting. So my goal is to be able to do a shorter, more intense, focused prep to where it comes off easily because I maintained longer. I'm gaintaining or main gains, right?
Sure. No,
I'm
that makes a lot of sense.
staying right in that maintenance range, about the high end of my maintenance range, without pushing into too much of a surplus. I'm now ready to not see any more gains on the scale, and just work toward building without putting on body fat at this stage.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to, as we're coming up here on time, I had a couple other questions, and just in regards to like your training, because I know your main man Bronson, as I call him, he's a CrossFit guy. How are you? So in terms of like, let's say in the off season, how does your training, if it maybe it doesn't change, I don't know, but how does your like what training methodologies are you using? Do you leverage any sort of CrossFit, or do you typically stick to bodybuilding? Is that kind of what you do? Okay, okay.
Bodybuilding all day. So in a cut,
Mm-hmm.
well, really in a cut or a build, and this is the other thing I talk about, is we don't change the way we train for fat loss versus muscle gain. We are
Mm-hmm.
always striving for muscle building because in a fat loss phase, we're now at risk for losing muscle. Even on keto, which is protective, right? We still are ultimately going to get to a place, especially competitors and lean individuals. And any of my ladies who are already at a healthy level of body fat percentage, mid 20s or low 20s, the longer you're in a deficit now, you are fighting against losing muscle. So you need to send that muscle building signal, and you need to send it frequently. So you need to have your consistent training the same way you would in a building phase. The only thing I might change, tiny little things with training in a cutting phase, where I might do a little more supersets. I might cut down on the rest times between my sets. But we manage the cut with food and cardio rather than changing the way we train. So I'm always doing a bodybuilding style hypertrophy training, body part splits, and I switch it up. So what I do in my Keto Bikini Academy with my group training, I write the training for myself, and then I adapt it for my academy. So I have an
Makes sense.
advanced level, intermediate level, and beginner level. The advanced level is doing very close to what I'm doing. So I'm really throwing them, the big guns. And I switch it up every 8 to 9 weeks with
Okay.
new training split. And that's when I might change the body parts that we're working on different days. I might change how many days a week we're training. I might change the frequency of rest times. So like right now we've been doing a 1 day on, 1 day off program, where some days you're going to be doing 3 days a week. Some weeks you're going to do 3 days a week, every other day. And some weeks you're going to be doing 4 days a week, every other day. And it's a full body program. So, but my bread and butter for most of my programs is upper lower split. We do 2 leg days or 2 lower body, 2 upper body days. And I'll just split up which muscles we're working on those days. So I might do a push pull upper, and I might split up a glutes and hamstrings versus a quads and hamstrings lower body day. Or the program we're getting ready to go into, I'm actually doing a full upper twice a week and a full lower twice a week. So you're hitting every upper body muscle group twice a week and every lower body muscle group twice a week, which is exciting. This is kind of a new split that I'm trying this time to get more frequency of training each of the muscle groups, which is ideal for building mass.
Yeah. And no, that makes sense. And that's actually really, really cool. And then in terms of like, let's say the diet and how you apply that to the individual. Now, I'm again, I'm assuming here that you're probably going to take a little bit more of a unique approach based off where they're at, what they want to do. You know, not everyone's going to be in a bikini competition. Some people just want to come in and lose weight. How do you approach like the ketogenic? Like from a basic standpoint, how do you approach like the ketogenic macro breakdown? If someone's coming into you and they're like, "Hey, I don't typically eat like this. Like that, you know, I eat like grains and rice and whatever." How do you approach like that the diet shift with them?
Yeah, so I have an in-depth intake form that I ask everyone to fill out.
Mm,
A lot about where they're coming from, their particular struggles. We ask everything from supplements to health conditions to what is your preference?
hmm
Right. And so that's a big question on there is what is your preference in the low carb space? Because everybody I work with is low carb. We don't do any high carb, low fat. That's the one thing that and veganism is the two things I don't do. Everything is animal based and
Yeah.
everything is low carb. But I'll give them a range of like, if you have a preference in how you do this, do you prefer pure, carnivore, what I call ketovore, um, keto, or low carb? And low carb is more like anywhere from 50 grams of carbs up to 100 to 150. Uh,
hmm
and so they're going to tell me kind of what they're most comfortable with, what they're most interested in, what they've been doing, and we start there. And then the big thing I tell everyone, I don't use calculators, and I highly encourage them not to use calculators. These
Like calorie counting, you mean?
the macro
Or yeah, I
calculators,
got it.
including the macro calculators. Um, I will look at a TDEE calculator, total daily energy expenditure, only as a reference point to also compare with all the information that they've given me and their hard data. So once they come in with us, they have a week where I'm not going to set macros for them. I need to see what they're already eating.
Mm.
I want you to not change any. This is the hardest part for everybody.
Yeah,
Don't
because they want to get going right away. They want to make the changes when they're probably signing up to work with you. They're like, I want to change now. And you're like, no, we're going to wait a week.
I
Yeah.
can't give you macros if I don't know what you're eating now. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, I know what you told me on the intake form.
Yeah.
But if I could tell 99% of the time, what they told me on the intake form is not what they're doing.
hmm
Because I
That
asked,
sounds,
are you tracking? And if you're tracking, tell me what your macros are and what your calories are. It's almost never matches what they're actually doing. So then I'm like, okay, I want to see it all. So I need to see a full week of tracking what you're already doing. And from that, I take that with everything else. And I will also look at a TDEE. And the reason I look at the TDEE is this person chronically under eating for what they should be able to eat to maintain?
hmm,
Because the TDE is going to take, it's a formula. It's going to say for your age, for your body composition, and your activity level, what should you be able to eat to maintain your weight? And a lot of my ladies are coming in considerably under eating for what I would want them to be able to eat to sustain.
hmm,
So in that case, I have to take a different approach with them. So I determine that's the first thing I determine is are they ready for a fat loss phase, or do they need a restoration phase, or do we need a maintenance phase? So I decide that first.
got it.
Then I have to do a little back and forth with them because sometimes that's not what they would want to do, right?
Yeah.
But then from there, in terms of the ketogenic approach, I have kind of a rules of thumb that I follow, and it has nothing to do with calculators, but I'd like to see you eating at least 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight in protein, not lean body mass. For most of my ladies, that's too low. Um, Now, if they're overweight, we're talking 200 pounds or more, it's not going to be too low. But for my ladies who are don't weigh a lot but are under muscled and over fat, right? I have a lot of ladies who are kind of in that skinny fat camp. right? We need to change their body composition. And if they ate their lean body mass and protein, it would not even be 100 pounds. I mean, 100 grams. That's what it would be for me. If I
Hmm.
calculated it based on lean body mass, it would be 94, 95 grams of protein a day. That's not enough.
Yeah.
So I like to set based on ideal body weight or current body weight based on where they are.
Mm.
So we set that protein and we do not do ratios. I'm not looking at ratios of fat to protein.
Mm.
The protein, I set the carbs based on what I know they need metabolically and what
Hmm.
the preference is,
Sure.
whether or not we need to kind of work towards something or jump right to it, or they're already carnivore, so let's keep them on carnivore for now. And then I set the fat based on how much energy they're going to need based on what phase we're in. Are we in
Ah,
loss? Are we in maintenance? Are we in restoration? And we go
got
from
gotcha. And then going back to the carbs piece, you'll kind of flex that carbs piece based off of if they're low carb, but they're maybe they're feeling a certain type of way and they don't know it quite yet. You might bring the carbs down a little bit to kind of maybe transition them more towards keto. Do you ever kind of like maybe push someone in a direction based off you and your experience and knowing what they might need?
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
in both directions. So
yeah.
yeah, definitely if they're coming in with metabolic issues, with
Hmm.
blood sugar regulation issues, we definitely want to go more toward keto. And it
Hmm.
all is going to depend on where they're coming from. If they're coming from high carb, I don't like to jump them there right away. So we'll start just pulling back on those carbs and we'll work our way down. Sometimes they start feeling the benefits so quickly that they'll, after a week or two, they'll be like, you know what, I'm ready. Let's go for it.
Hmm.
Right. In But there's also a lot of ladies that come to me who've been doing keto carnivore for a long time and are deathly afraid of a strawberry.
Mm.
And
Yeah, the flip side of things.
issues with carbs that are creating binge and disordered eating patterns.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
when I see that, I actually have to push them in the other direction.
interesting.
And sometimes it's with carbs, but sometimes it's with overall intake. And a lot of the time it's with overall intake. A lot of my ladies come to me not eating enough fat because they're
Yeah.
so afraid of gaining fat. So they've been doing this for so long, but they're way under, they just don't have energy. And they're running themselves into the ground. And so for some of them, I have to push them on the fat. For some of them, I have to push them, okay, you know what? You're binging multiple times a week on carbs and fats. And yet you want to stay at these low macros because you're trying to make up for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So instead, let's set your macros higher. And I'm going to tell you what I want you to focus on with your food selection. Because maybe if you allow yourself to eat the blueberries or the strawberries or the uh, Brussels sprouts or the thing you're denying yourself because you have to keep your carbs at 10 because then you're not carnivore and they're just so hung up on the labels or
Yeah.
whatever it might be, or they're afraid of what it's going to do on the scale because all carbs are going to increase the scale weight, but it has nothing to do with your body composition. Then I
Yeah.
have to work them back the other direction. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
No two people are the same, and that's another thing that gets so many people get it wrong. And I also like to educate them on what they're going to see out there in the space. There is a reason why you go to certain communities and they say, and they give you these drastic macros, um, way too low or tripling your fats and cutting your protein to almost nothing. They do all these things because they are working with these large communities. They're not working one-on-one. A lot of these are not working in paid environments where you have a paid client who you're able to go deeper with them on what their particular issues are. So they need their protocols to
Hmm.
work with a large population of people. So the more drastic they can go and the more extreme they can go, the better results they're going to have for the general population. And so
Yeah.
people are listening to these influencers and doing these extreme things, and then eventually it stops working because it's not really the right thing for you to be doing. So I always say, consider the source. Who are they talking to? They may not be talking to you. You may not be the ideal client that they're speaking to with this protocol. You may not need that. So, I like to really help ladies figure out what is right for them. I meet them where they are.
No, and that obviously makes a ton of sense. And I know we're coming up here on time, Natalie. Like, what are you currently working on now?
Oh my gosh, so much. Exciting stuff. So in less than a week now, we are starting our next challenge. So I do a challenge usually twice a year, but I'm doing something a little fun this year. Usually my biggest challenge is in the summer. I do my summer shape up, and there's a big payoff, and it's a blast. I'm actually doing it twice in a row this summer. So right now we're spring into summer prep challenge. And this is a 8-9 week program from May and June. And then we're going to launch right into our summer shape up. So 2 challenges in a row. This one starts May 4th, next Sunday.
Oh, wow, that's coming up then.
Coming out really quick. It'll be, it's already up on my website, on all my socials. Natalie J. Grasso / summer prep challenge, or summer prep. I think just summer prep on my website. But you can find the details on my YouTube. I have a Facebook group that is absolutely amazing. It's kind of my extended tribe from those who are in the academy. So all my academy ladies are in there, but then also it's open to everyone and it's free. So for anyone who just needs a push, I do a free masterclass every Monday night on my YouTube channel. Last night I did it on, kind of giving a pep talk, get your groove back.
Hmm.
So I highly recommend check that out if you just need a pep talk. Dive into the Facebook group. I said there, when I do challenges that are inside the academy that are behind a paywall, I always like to do a free version of it in my Facebook group. So for those who can't afford or not really ready to dive into like all the accountability that takes place in the academy, they can dive in and help and just let us know what your intentions are for the challenge and do it alongside of us for free.
Awesome, that's great. And yeah, this was honestly fantastic, Natalie. Like I learned a lot, especially about like, from the women's side of things and just the competing side of things and what you all have to go through and the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it. So like your experience has been like super awesome to get some insight into. Where else, before we wrap up, where else can I know you were dropping some links in regards to some events that you're doing, and where else can people find you? How can they work with you if that's a route that they want to go?
Yeah, so Instagram and my Facebook group are the 2 places I'm most active. Instagram is at the Keto Bikini Pro, and we just opened a page for the academy itself. So at Keto Bikini Academy now has its own home on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook, Keto Bikini Secrets. So just search YouTube Keto Bikini Secrets, Facebook group Keto Bikini Secrets. And you can get information on any of those platforms about how to work with me. You can book a discovery call from my links on my Instagram and my website, nataliejgrasso.com, which is getting a makeover right now. In a few weeks, the
Oh,
new
very cool.
will be up. I'm very excited. That I think will better represent who I am and what we do than it currently does, because your girl made it herself many, many moons ago. We got the job done, but it's about to get a facelift. So
No, sometimes those things are necessary. So that's good to hear. But yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you, Natalie. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks, guys, for listening to the Low Carb Consultant podcast. We'll catch you all on the next one.
thanks.